very warm welcome to the Watershed and to the University of the West of England, Bristol's Distinguished Address Series, and I'm delighted to welcome you here. Thank you very much for coming. I get the job of warm-up act and obviously telling you about the general thing that's going to happen in a minute. So I'm Professor Sir Steve West. I'm the Vice-Chancellor of the University, and I've been the Vice-Chancellor now for I think 18 years, something like that, so quite a long time, and I know Bristol very, very well. This event, the bit of good news is, first of all, can I encourage you to switch your mobile phones off or put them on to vibrate, and then just smile if something goes off in your pocket. We're not expecting any fire alarms. If there is a fire alarm, then we will give you advice in terms of how to exit, and we'll make sure that everybody safely exits the building. But as I say, we're not expecting anything like that. Toilets you will have discovered on the way in, and obviously they're still there. They won't have gone. And if you do need those, then fine, you'll go back out the way you came in, is my advice. A little bit about the university. So the University of the West of England, Bristol, is very much a community-based university. I describe us as for the city, with the city and of the city. And it's very much about how we work effectively across the city region to engage with communities, to work with communities, schools, colleges, businesses, and also the wider community of this fantastically diverse city region that we're in, full of excitement, full of inspiration, sometimes surprise, but also recognising that we've got some fairly significant inequalities across our city region, and we have a responsibility to work together to reduce those education and health inequalities and inequalities generally across the whole of our region, to really make sure that everybody in our city region has the opportunity to thrive, flourish and succeed, to be themselves and to go on and do fantastic things. And as a university, we take that responsibility very seriously, and everything that we do, we try to align to a set of values that are around ambition, collaboration, inclusivity, innovation and enterprise. And I suspect in our conversation that shortly will occur, we'll get a sense of what that might mean in terms of our guest speaker this evening, the fantastic Mr. Levi Roots. And I know you're going to enjoy the event. So Levi is going to be interviewed, I guess, by Sherrie Eugene-Hart. Sherrie, many, many years ago, was a governor of the university, and that's when I first met her. It's fantastic to see you again. Thank you very much for doing this as well. And I thought I would just do, as you do in preparation, a little bit of a search on Mr. Levi Roots. So this is the warm-up bit. What did I find? Well, it's obviously Wikipedia stuff. We'll never believe anything you read in Wikipedia. That's what we tell our students. So I dug a little bit deeper. So what did we find? And I remember, first of all, meeting Levi in October 2022. And it was at a fundraising event for the St Paul's Carnival. And obviously, you know, Levi is the chair of that particular carnival. And it was a fantastic evening, absolute inspiration. Levi lit the room up, worked the room brilliantly, I have to say, and got me to spend way too much money, way too much money, bidding on a whole raft of pictures and artefacts that were going to raise money to support the carnival. I walked away with some fantastic things. I lost out to people who were completely bidding for everything, but I did get some things, and it was probably one of the most entertaining and inspiring evenings for a very long time, full of joy, full of hope and full of excitement. So that was my first meeting with Levi, and of course I also had to go out and buy the fantastic Reggae Reggae sauce. which my kids are now completely addicted to, and it has to be in our cupboard, ready for them to spice up their boring food, no matter what sort it is. So thank you for giving me the inspiration to go out and buy Reggae Reggae sauce. So Levi Roots this evening will share his story through a conversation. And what did I discover on the internet, first of all? Well, first of all, you can find Levi, and it's probably where we were first introduced to Levi, if I'm honest, in a fantastic moment on Dragon's Den, where Levi entertained the dragons, and eventually walked away with a £50,000 investment from Peter Jones as one of the dragons and Richard Farleigh as the other. 3 dragons stupidly dipped out, but I suspect you ended up with the dragon that you really wanted in that. And that was the start of our engagement, I guess, as an audience. And I suspect that was where we all went out and bought Reggae Reggae sauce just to see, well, what is this stuff? Is it any good? And I think most of us that have done that have then discovered it was. Great. So a quick search also is worth doing, by the way, because you discover Levi on Desert Island Disc programme. You discover Oxford Union interview in full, where you see the richness of the man, the authenticity of the man, and you discover a very talented man, a musician, a producer, a songwriter, a performer, a chef, a Rastafarian, a TV personality, recently on TV, an entrepreneur, a businessman, a father, and a leader, and I think a lifelong learner, continually learning and seeking out new ways of doing things. So I know you're going to join me in welcoming Levi and Sherrie, who will interview, and I do hope that you enjoy this evening and have a tremendous time. Thank you very much, Levi. Thank you, Sherrie.
Steve, thank you very much for that introduction. That was wonderful. In fact, the way that you came across there, Steve, I think you should be here, actually. You did that so well. First of all, I would just like to say welcome to you, Levi Roots. And thank you to the university for inviting me to be here and to share this space with you. I'm very excited, and I hope you are excited to be here as well. We've got about an hour or so, and I'd like to think that we're all friends, enjoying a conversation and being inspired by what you have to say. So, let me just get this right. So, Levi, your beginnings. You were born Keith Valentine Graham.
Which I hate that. No one called me Keith in here today. I'm going to have you lot here today.
Sorry. 1958 in Jamaica. You're the 5th of 6 children, raised by your grandmum in Jamaica. And you moved to the UK and grew up in Brixton in the 70s. You came when you were about 11? Yeah. The public got to know you, as Steve quite rightly said, Dragon's Den 17 years ago. I know. Gosh. Reggae Reggae sauce became a household name, and you've always stayed true to yourself. And recently, you stayed true to Louis Walsh as well?
Yes.
Yeah? You do have a connection with Bristol, a strong connection with Bristol, and we'll talk more about that later. There are lots of questions I've got for you, and it's not just me. The audience have given questions as well, and there's some online questions too. And there will be Q&A at the end, so we'll have time to sort of flesh out stuff if you're happy with that. But we'll cover culture, challenges, aspiration, business acumen, your Bristol connections, family, the future, what's next for Levi, that kind of thing, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Are there any no-go areas?
No, not at all. You go wherever you want to go and I'll follow.
Okay, I like that. So let's begin at the beginning then. I feel as if you want to give us a tune.
Yeah, I want to warm up first.
Okay,
yeah,
shall we do that?
Music comes first.
Okay, let's do that, and then we'll start at the beginning.
Somebody put some music in the food for me. Give me some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I call it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. Just like my baby, it is the perfect delight. It's got some peppers and some herbs and spice. Me want some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. So nice with your fried chicken. Make burgers finger licking. And your barbecue and your drumsticks. Put some reggae, reggae sauce on your dish. So nice with fish and chips. And in a vegetarian dish. As a marinade or as a dip. Say me love you reggae, reggae sauce. Nice up your chips. Reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I call it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. You can eat it with some crackers, steamed down with 2 fat snappers, some okra and some spinners, swimming in some coconut juice. In Jamaica's national dish, in the ackee and in the sal. Fish, you can have it with what you wish. In a Chinese, Japanese, everything well crisp. Reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I call it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce, yeah.
Woo! Nice. I love that. Thank you. We love that.
Thank you.
So let's go back to Jamaica. You were brought up by your grandmother.
Yes, her name was Miriam.
And she inspired you, and I believe you got your cooking idea, your cooking inspiration from her. Let's start there with your grandma.
You know, I've always said that grandmas are superheroes. They really are, particularly if you're from the Caribbean, because in those days it was the time of the Windrush generation. Our old Windrush, you know, people were coming over to the UK, and my parents was no different. They read the letter that was coming from the UK saying to Caribbean people, letter from the Queen actually, it was saying, come to England because there's gold dust on the ground to be picked up. And my parents, like many others, thought, okay, we'll go and have some of that. But when they got here, they realized that the gold dust was actually dog shit. And they had to pick it up. And the plan was for them was to send for the kids at one at a time, working through all this dog mess and doing all the worst jobs that there was. But they were entrepreneurs. And the grandmothers had that job of looking after the children. And this wasn't just Jamaica. I think this was right across the Caribbean, where the grandmothers had the job of looking after the kids. And of course, you know, I was the youngest of 5 at the time. And my grandma had 5 of us in the bed. And every year I would come running out of the woods where we lived, from the mango trees, picking all the mangoes. And I was, about 7, 8 at the time. And every year I would see my grandmother in tears over there, and I would see a brown suitcase arrive on the other side. And I didn't really recognize that this was a time for one of my brothers and sisters to leave. Because I was having such a great time with my grandma. We slept in one big bed together. And every night I would be getting up on the floor because my brothers and sisters would be nudging me out the bed. So every time I came in and I saw that scenario of Granny in tears and the brown suitcase color grip, I was rubbing my hands together and saying, yes, more room in the bed for me. So I didn't realize that one day when I came out from in the woods, come running out the woods, my grandmother calling that dinner is ready. So I've come home and I saw the same scenario. Granny in tears, brown suitcase on the left. And when I look around, I didn't see any of my brothers and sisters to rub my hands together because they'd all left. and I was the final one. And it was the saddest moment of my life because this woman was teaching me how to cook. I couldn't read or write, but she was the one that was teaching me everything she knew about Caribbean food and how to cook sauces. She was a great maker of sauce in Clarendon in Jamaica where he was born. And I realizing that it was my time to leave when I didn't see any of my brothers and sisters as the final one, as the youngest one. And the hardest thing was pulling myself away from her, and nobody had prepared me for that moment when I had to leave this most amazing woman. So if I was to choose somebody who is the greatest inspiration of my life, it had to be her. Because it was at that moment I realized what she had meant to me. So yeah, she was an absolutely superwoman.
Wow.
And her name was Miriam, my grandmother.
We love Miriam, don't we? We love Miriam. I do want to stay with Miriam. She influenced you so much. I want to talk about when you watched her cook.
Yeah.
Because many people say, did she teach you how to cook? I would say probably that you watched her cook.
Yes, absolutely. It wasn't a thing that she was giving lessons.
Exactly.
But I think I was one of these kids that there's an old sort of Caribbean saying when young kids was like around their mother or their grandparents, and they used to call it ya wolan pan a frack tail. And I was the youngest that was always pulling on my grandmother's skirt, because I was always hanging on to her. And she would be cooking these amazing meals. I think one of the memories of her cooking was me cooking fried dumplings, because it was an easy one. I mean, other Caribbean people would call it Johnny cakes, or that, but Jamaica it was fried dumplings. And she would be rolling these dumplings and putting them in the pot, and I would be like diligently just, watching her. And at one stage, she kneaded the flour and gave me a bit of the flour to make a shape with the dough. And I remember me making a shape of like a duck. I still have these memories of me right now. And I made the shape, I was only like maybe 8 at the time, 8, 9. And I gave it to her and she put it in the pot. And I just watched it as it cooked, and she was turning it over, and then when it was done and it was looking all amazing and golden and everything as fried dumpling does, then she gave it to me and I devoured it. And that was my first memory of her actually taking me through the process of kneading the flour and waiting for the flour to raise and then cooking it very slowly and then devouring the food. So she never taught me to cook by saying per se, this is how you did it. But she had the patience to allow me to actually indulge in her making the food as well too. So she was absolutely brilliant.
And at what stage did she allow you to have free reign in the kitchen? Just go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's when I became a kind of a sous chef for her, because as in Jamaica, everything that you ate in those days grows on trees or grows in the backyard. We were very poor, so we couldn't afford the meats and stuff like that. Everything that we literally had was stuff that my grandfather grew on his little farm that he had. So I was the sous chef that would be climbing the trees. She would send me up to climb the ackee tree, and I'd have to go and pick the ackee or pick the fruits or dig for the yams or the potatoes. So that's how I actually got my love for food, of growing natural food. Because as the youngest, it was always me that she would send out in the bush to pick the Scotch bonnet chilies, to climb the tree and pick the pimento from the tree, and absolutely everything that she did. Because we couldn't afford the meats, like, the beefs and all that kind of stuff like that. She was so good at making sauces that she would just make this, we didn't call it sauces back then, but it was more of a relish or just gravy. But we had all the yams and the potatoes and everything, but what you needed for those yams and potatoes was just a gravy to make it feel like you were having like a Sunday dinner with all the flavors that was necessary. But she was great at making this gravy. She was absolutely brilliant at putting these flavors together. And that's how I first saw her making this sauce type thing, and understood that as long as you have the basics, then what you need is something that is really flavorsome to bring all the flavors together. And that's when I just, sort of saw her doing the sauce, doing this gravy. And, years and years later, that's what Reggae Reggae sauce became, is me trying to copy those flavors that my grandmother would have put together to create this most amazing sort of relish that goes on top of anything that you had. You pour this thing on, and then it would just turn it into something amazing.
So is there a secret in that sauce?
But I'm not going to tell you right now. I suppose, as in any ingredients when you do it, the secret is about the patience that you have to do it.
So you cook with love?
Yes, you cook with love, because I don't think there's any such thing as a secret ingredient. It's all about is how you merge it together and what you put in. And I think it's the same thing with the sauces. We're just watching her and seeing that the patience that she had to create this flavorsome relish that she used to make. And when I, became a man later on in my life, when I came to the UK and started to cook, it was the same patience that I had to be able to cook and, and smell the food and knows what to put in, not to put too much, not to put, too less in. How I came upon in creating the sauce that would sort of replicate what my grandmother did.
Yeah. I just want to ask about seasoning and meat, but you don't eat meat, do you?
No.
All right, so let's not ask about seasoning and meat. Let's brush over that one. Businessman, where do you get your business acumen from? Is that your parents, or does that go back to your grandmum as well?
I would say that my business acumen truthfully comes from being an hustler on the street. And I say this now because I do believe some of these young people that are in our communities as great entrepreneur skills. Because I never, sort of learn how to do anything as an entrepreneur other than being Levi Roots, being myself. And it was that skill that I picked up on the streets. Because, I always love to say that Peter Jones didn't turn me into an entrepreneur overnight. I was always Levi Roots. I was always me. Reggae Reggae Sauce was a phenomenal, success just weeks after coming out the den. So it was obvious that the skills that I honed while I was in Brixton, as a young kid running up around and doing all sorts of unflavorsome stuff, came to play as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because really, entrepreneurship is about hard work. It's about believing in something, but also having the hard work acumen to be able to stick with it and do it.
Yeah.
So cooking was an easy thing for me, but I think the most difficult part of entrepreneurship is sticking with something for the long term. Because hustling is one thing, but business is another thing, and business is about long-term thinking. So for me, it was a merger of the two, is having that natural skills that I had on the streets when things wasn't going right for me as a kid, when I lived in South London, in Brixton, and no one like a Peter Jones would actually come round into these areas and says, look, there's a young lad called Levi, looks like he could hold on to a job. Nobody came around and looking like a Peter. But for me, it was just when I did have someone like a Peter, is to use these same skill of these hard-working skills, to stick with it, and that's how I became a success.
Right. So let's jump out of Jamaica and jump into Brixton. Life in Brixton, you've alluded to a lot of stuff. You've mentioned hustling.
Yeah.
You've mentioned, things didn't always go the way that you wanted it to go, and it actually got from bad to worse.
Yeah.
You ended up in prison.
Yeah.
So could you share that story?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I got to say that years later, I'll just jump forward just before I forget this part, because it's always an inspirational part. I remember just after Dragon's Den, when I was invited to go to my local Brixton on Electric Avenue, which is like down the market, and the mayor was there. And the mayor was giving me the keys to Brixton. And while he was just about to hand me the keys to my local community, I just made a quip to the mayor. I just said to him that, Your Excellency, do you realize that I've actually burgled every house in Brixton? But really what I was saying is that you can change. You can come from where you are now. Like I said, like many of these young people that are in our system right now and on the streets of Bristol right now, is saying that you can come from a place and you can change in order for the mayor to be handing me the keys to my community. It's about that change that you make. But for me, that change started when I was actually at Her Majesty's pleasure, when I was in prison for a long time. I had a drama teacher that came into the prison. She came in once a week, and I had written a poem called Genevieve, that when I was in my first drama class with her, I read the poem to her. And everyone knew me then in prison as Keith Graham. And I was explaining to the drama teacher that, I don't really like the name Keith, and I don't understand why people are calling me Keith. I want to be known as Levi. And I talked to her about how I discovered in school when I wanted to be a singer and a poem writer, that I looked up the name Keith Graham and found that it was a Scottish name. And thinking that, look in the mirror and think, I don't look fucking Scottish. Something is happening here. And actually, I learned that 90% of Jamaicans had Scottish names. And I just thought that if I wanted to be me, I needed to have a name that resonated with me. So I explained all this to, her name was Teresa, this mentor of mine, anyway. So I explained it to Teresa and I said to her, look, I am me, I am not this Keith, I am Levi. And she was one of the first person that understood, and she said that you're not Keith. You are Levi Roots, the person who you are in front of her. And I think that was the first understanding that I had of a mentor, of somebody who believed in who I believed I am, and not the person who had got me into trouble. Because I went in prison as Keith Graham, as the person that didn't identify with the name that you had, which was given to me by my father, by the way. And I just never understood why that he gave me this name, and I never identified with it. But after Teresa was telling me that you are Levi Roots, the person that loves music and loves cooking, and that's who you are, that's when I understood that, yes, I need to be me, and there was a reason for me to be the person who I am. So I would attribute her as one of my greatest mentors who, taught me to be yourself.
So where do you feel she got that name from? Was it from your aura?
No, I actually named myself that. When I found out about the Scottish connection to do with Jamaican people, that 90% of Jamaicans had Scottish names, I decided to follow the Rastafarian creed at the time. Bob Marley was a massive influence to all of us as young people back in the day. And it was through him being a member of the 12 tribes, which is, Jamaica has 4 different Rastafarian culture. And one of them is the 12 tribes. And the 12 tribes taught you that according to the month that you were born, then there is a tribe that attributed to you. And I'm from the month of June. And Levi, the Levites, is from the month of June. And hence I wanted to be identified with the person who I am. It's a bit like your horoscopes in that kind of, but in a Rastafari way. And Levi is the teacher. He is the scribe in the Bible. The Levi is the one that administered to God within the temple. And I was always a bit of a nerd because I couldn't really read or write when I came to this country. I couldn't even spell Keith when I came to this country. So hence I always had a book in my hand when I was at school. So in some ways I got this mantle as a bit of a nerd walking around with a book, always trying to read when I couldn't really read. So I think being a Levi really resonated with me and my friends as this person that, loves books and loves to read, even though he couldn't. So I chose the name Levi to identify with my month and with my newfound Rastafari culture that I wanted to follow. And obviously the roots come from being, the strongest part of the tree is the root, and gave myself the name Levi Roots. And that's how I wanted to be, and not Keith.
And it suits you, suits him, doesn't it? Yeah, Levi Roots. So in that answer, one of the things you said was, I am me. Steve gave some lovely words about you, and they were words. And I gave some lovely words about you, and they were words too. But who are you?
Well, I like to think that I have a mantra, which I attribute to myself. But I tell it to a lot of kids that I talk to now about being you and loving yourself and loving who you are. And I'd like to share with you, if you don't mind, my mantra. It's don't undermine who you are by comparing yourself with another. It's because we are all different, why each of us is special in our own way. So never set your goals by what other people think important, because only you can become the best of you. And really, that is about loving yourself of who you are, because don't undermine, because I think when you don't love yourself, you're undermining the beautiful person that you are underneath. But the key thing is to find the best of you. And sometimes we can't do that ourselves. I think a lot of the times we perhaps need somebody else to discover that there is somebody else in there. And that's when there's a mentors come into place that can actually spot that you need to love yourself. You need to love who you are as a person. So as I suppose, finding me and being able to love myself is become a key part of my makeup of who I am. Yeah. Because I love me. Yeah, even though I'm not the best at everything, as I says, I couldn't read or write until I couldn't even spell, as I says, the name Keith when I arrived into this country. But being able to love who I am as a person, I think that's taught me a lot about me and allowed me to flourish in my own way.
I want to talk about challenges, and in that you've mentioned a few challenges. I mean, reading and writing is just one of them. But when people see you, what do you think people see?
I'm hoping that they see the honest person that's there, the person that's, I never like to hide anything at all. I think I do a lot of prison visits now because of my journey of coming through that system. Yeah. So now I go into prisons, and one of the first things that I do when I go in, I tell the prisoners where I'm from so they can identify with me. And it's become really popular over the past 16 years. I have a tour that I do called the School of Life Tour. And I've literally been into nearly every prison in this country over the past 16 years. Because it's something that I think I need to do to go back and show people that you can come from a place like that and change into become something in my way. So when I think of myself, I think of that honesty, of owning your past, but turn it into something positive. And I think there are a lot of people that I meet when I go into prisons and I talk into them that don't want to own who they are. But there's something special in that, because that's what change is about. You have to recognize yourself, the now and the past, to be able to, become somebody or to become what you want to be. And I think I look in the mirror and I see both. I see the Levi of the past in Brixton that couldn't focus, that was running up and down, but had a natural talent in him, but needed somebody else to be able to make the present become a factor. And that's why I go into these prisons now, because I believe that when I go in and I talk to some of these prisoners, they can identify with who I am. Because one of the key things about talking to people who's been through affliction is that they need to identify with the person who is trying to tell them to make a change. And there ain't nobody better than me to go in and talk to them, because I've actually been there and I've done that. So I think honesty plays a lot about who you are as a person. And I think also, appearing on Dragon's Den is that honesty, because I remember before I went on, I went round to everybody and told them that I'd been asked to go on Dragon's Den. And everywhere I went, people said, Levi, don't take that damn guitar. Because, I wanted to be me. And I remember going around to everybody that I knew. And I said that, look, I've been asked to go on this Dragon's Den thing, and I really feel like I want to go and sing. And they said, it's no X Factor, Levi. No one wanted to be me to be the authentic me. And I remember going around to see my mom. It was a couple of days before I went on Dragon's Den. I'd looked through all my coins as with my kids, my 6 kids that was in my house, and we knew that I was going on Dragon's Den in a couple of days' time. So we looked through our monies that we had. I knew we had to take a taxi. I couldn't take the bus because I had the guitar and the sauce. So I went round to see my mom. I went round to knock on the door, and I knock on the door, and I just about to tell her, Mom, I'm going on Dragon's Den. It's going to be amazing. Could I borrow 20 quid? But before the words of 20 quid come up my mouth, she said, go pick up the Bible, man. As all Caribbean mothers do, go and pick up the Bible. So I picked up the Bible, and I went to her, and I said, Mom, look, you're telling me to pick up the Bible when I just want this 20 quid. I'm going on the most important journey of my life, and you're telling me to read the bloody Bible. She says, open the Bible. So I opened the Bible, and she says, pick out Psalm 23. Anybody know what Psalm 23 says? The Lord is my shepherd. So I started to read, and I was like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. She says, wait there. Just as I got to the part where I shall not want. She says, if you be you, because she knew everybody was telling me don't take the guitar. So she says, if you be yourself and you go on Dragon's Den, you will come back as a dragon slayer. And I was like, Lord of mercy, dragon slayer. I was thinking that that's some amazing lyrics, that you will come back as a dragon slayer. She says, but you have to be you. And I think it was that moment that I realized that I needed to be me. Because everybody else was saying, don't go and take the guitar. Don't change the mold of doing how Dragons Den has always been. But you go and you stand there and, and you talk like you're Prince Charles. Oh, Dragons have got this most amazing sauce and it's absolutely fabulous and all that kind of stuff. I went in and rocked the place with the guitar, and that was my mom was saying to me, you need to be you to be it. So yeah, those instances would always live with me, always.
It sounds like you want to give back. You go to prison, you're giving back. You remember the stories from when you were in prison and you had someone to mentor you.
Yes.
It's those little things that people say that can actually change your life.
Absolutely.
For the better.
Yeah.
And you talk about what you say to prisoners in prison. What about young people, young boys in particular, growing up in Brixton, for example? Not everyone has a mentor.
Yeah, no, and again, it goes back to what I was saying in that people like a Peter Jones and a Richard Farleigh would never come round to a Brixton. And even though even now when I walk around in my local area, I see some brilliant kids who can be the next Levi Roots, but it's finding those people that are willing to spend the time to go in and mentor some of these children. I think that's the most difficult part. But there are some heroes that are running around in these areas that don't know what to do and are involved in what they're involved in, not because they want to, but because it's a necessity. And, recently I've actually moved out from Brixton. And one of the reasons why I moved out after living there for many years and thought I would never leave my locality. But I have a young son. He's only 11 now. And for him, I didn't want it to take as long as it did for me to wait for someone like a Peter Jones or a Dragon to be able to help me to change my life. And, for me, it was about giving him the chance to be able to excel himself a little bit more. Like I said, because I see many other young kids like him. So I think mentorship is an amazing thing, and I think a lot of us have something to offer. It's difficult, but I do think that those of us who have made it, that's perhaps one of the most rewarding things that you can do, is perhaps become a mentor to young people who perhaps need that mentorship and need that knowledge of what I got from, the mentors that I've had in my life.
Talk to me about being an entrepreneur, about making money, if that's important to you, about how people see you today in that same vein.
Yes.
When I talk about being an entrepreneur, the first thing people think maybe is you're a money man.
Well, it is. It is the case.
Is money important to you?
Yes, absolutely. I think wealth is important. I think I was brought up in a community that doesn't look well upon wealth because it's very religious-led. I think my community is built upon that fact of the biblical thing that tells you that you've got to get rid of your wealth and come back as a poor man and then everything would be all right. I've never believed that. I think that wealth is important. Maybe that's why someone like me, perhaps if I believed that, wouldn't relish wealth. But I think wealth is down to the hard work that you put into it. I give thanks every day that I've managed to work hard to accumulate the wealth that I have. And I would never look on that as something negative. As a matter of fact, I looked upon it as positive, and I teach that to young people now, that wealth is a good thing. Wealth is something to be celebrated, because you cannot get wealthy if you don't put the hard work into it. And I think you're not celebrating the wealth, you're celebrating that hard work that you've put into it. So no, I think it's amazing when I talk to other people who has made well in their life, and they celebrate that. And I think I've taken a little bit from my mentor, who's Peter. Again, it's about what you've accumulated, but it's about how you've accumulated. Because you've got to remember, I was saying to you that most of my life before I became a businessman was somebody that was accumulating wealth not by something that you owned, I think I'd become a master of non-resourcefulness, and that's non-resourcefulness. If I explain it, that's somebody who makes wealth of something that he doesn't control. But I think when you become wealthy as an entrepreneur by your own hard work, that is something that you've actually controlled and you've done that. So it is something to be celebrated. And yeah, I think it's something that need to be taught to our young people, especially young people from my area, from my walk of life, that wealth is not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that, like I said, you have to do the old biblical thing and get rid of your wealth and then come back as a poor man and then, God will love you. It's not about that. It is about the hard work that you put into it.
What would you say drives you?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
Because
I think my love for what I do drives me, because I still enjoy being the performer. I relish what I do. I relish being me. I relish the music and I relish the food, and it drives me on because I am not like your archetypal type of entrepreneur. Whereas I come to talk to you and have my guitar and these things inspire me. So I don't do anything that's not inspirational to me. I don't do anything that I don't love to do. I'm so lucky to have a brand that is about myself. The brand is not the sauce. The sauce is a product, but the brand is Levi Roots. And in that sense that I relish having these moments to be able to enjoy who I am. And if I can inspire other people, by being me, then it's job done. So I think it's a wonderful way for the brand to be you. And I always teach young people nowadays, I say to them, look, make the brand you. The product is one thing, but the product cannot sell itself. I mean, dare I say, if Peter, I had two investors on the show, as Peter had mentioned, Peter Jones and Richard Farleigh. Whereas I think Richard invested in Reggae Reggae sauce, but Peter invested in Levi Roots. Because I think 18 months after I got the investment from both, Peter wanted to sell his shares. Richard wanted to sell his shares. Because at the time, Reggae Reggae shares was worth a lot of money. And he had only paid £20,000 for the shares in my sauce, and £20,000 to Richard Farleigh is like a lunch break to him, which wasn't a lot of money. But I think 18 months after, it was worth a lot of money to him. So the moment came when he felt that he could sell his share for a lot of money. But it was a good thing that we had accumulated wealth at the time, and I was lucky enough to buy my shares back from Richard, because I knew that Richard didn't really invest in Levi Roots. Because yes, after £20,000, I had to pay him 10 times that amount in 18 months to get it back, which he's gone on record of saying is one of his best investments for that short period of time ever. But for me, it was about getting that shares back, from somebody who had only invested in the product. But Peter, on the other hand, I would never want to buy my shares back from Peter. Because in business, I really believe that you always need somebody that knows more than you. And for me, it's a fantastic thing to have someone like, Peter, who is an amazing business person. And we've become, something other than just an investor. We're now really good friends. And I don't know if you guys, I've got a video that I put online of how Peter gave me his office and everything when we first met. And, I go into the office every day, and I remember the first time we was in the office, he said to me, "Oh, Levi, there's our office, and there's the head of the table is your chair." And I said to him, "Peter, I would never sit in that chair. Because, even though the sauce is absolutely amazing and I'm the major shareholder, but as far as I'm concerned, I will always need you, because you are much more of a businessman than myself." So it's that respect also that I have for Peter that has made us become this most amazing. I mean, Peter would have never talked to anybody like me before in his life before we met, because he's completely from a different side of town from me. But I do think that magic of him actually trusting myself to be able to invest in me, and that's why I would never want to buy him out. I will, as long as he wants to be in, you know, I will always have Peter Jones in the business. But I can buy him out anytime I want to. But it's not about that.
You've mentioned your children. Well, what do they think of you?
Oh,
Are you
Lord of
just
mercy.
dad? Or are you Levi Roots? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Well, you know, you've hit a sort of art string there with my children. Because, again, the honesty always comes through. I've had a turbulent time with my children. I really have. You know, it's one of the things that I'm not happy of how I've been as a parent. I think I was really a rubbish parent in the past. I have 8 children by 7 different mothers. I'm not proud of it. I don't think that my elder children, I was really a good father before my fame came along. And it's something that I'm hoping one day that I can actually bridge that gap of doing that. But I have a young son, as I mentioned before, Christopher. He's 11. And with Christopher, I believe that I'm the best father that there is on this planet, because I've learned from not doing the right way with my past kids. Again, you know, my life is out there, you know, in the stars, in the papers, that people can read against me having to be honest at all times. Some of my kids did come out against me. I think the papers play a massive part in those early days when, you know, every newspaper column was coming out about how much money I had, and, you know, that I had more money than, you know, Alan Sugar and all this kind of stuff. And I think it had tarnished my children's mind against me, even within that first year after coming out of Dragon's Den, when I didn't have the wealth, because wealth takes time to build. But I think, you know, people will see these articles that was going around. I remember the Daily Mail had paid my children, you know, lots of money, and you know, giving them makeovers and everything to come out against me in the papers, because they all wanted BMWs and everything. And I was saying, no, we have to build a business, you know, before I can start buying you BMWs and houses and all that kind of stuff. But I think that had kind of lit a fire amongst my children, and some of them wasn't really pleased with that I was being adamant, saying that I'm not going to be this spendthrift of person that think that I can buy your love or buy you. We have to build wealth before we can start to spend wealth. And that didn't go well with them, because the papers were paying them lots of monies, and you know, and I didn't agree with that. So I'm not, you know, I'm not happy at the way that I've been as a father. Maybe I could have handled it a different way. And as some of you will see on my recent appearance in the Big Brother house, it was that moment when Sharon, you know, God bless her soul, Sharon Osbourne, who had sort of brought out that in me to talk about it, because I'd never really talked about it in the past, because I don't talk about my children on the negative things, you know. I don't want to talk against them. And I think at that moment when Sharon had said to me that I was the most inspirational person in the house for her, it brought out that moment. And as you can see, I was crying like a baby in the house, because I wanted to apologize to my children for the way that things had turned out. And it is perhaps the most difficult part of my whole experience within the Big Brother house, was to talk about them. But I'm hoping that one day, you know, things will change, and my children will see that, you know, see it in a different light, and won't see me as just money bags, and see me as dad. And things will change. But yeah, I'm not proud of how I am with some of my children. But as I said, with Christopher, he's brought so much joy into my life, because, you know, I thought I'd lost them all until I had him 12 years ago. And now, as I said, I am the happiest father that I could be, and you know, and I try to do the best for him.
You can. And I was going to say, you're working on ways of making things right with your other children.
Yes.
So you're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. And as I said, that's why the reasons why I think it came out in the Big Brother house, because I wanted to send a message to them to say that those who have a problem with me, you know, my door is always open for them to come and knock on my door. Or if I was to reach out to them, I'm hoping that they will open their doors and forgive me for the way that it's turned out. But I really did believe that, and I still do believe that, the way I sort of magnified the old thing about wealth, that it's not about buying your children. I think your children have to love you for who you are, and doesn't matter what. Because that's how I was with my parents. My parents never had anything for me at all. But I still love my mom, and I love my grandma, and I love all the people that inspired me. But as I says, newspapers are a terrible thing, you know, when you are a celebrity and they decide to take on your family. And if it wasn't for them, I think that I would have a different story to tell with my children.
Staying with Big Brother, I mean, I'm sure many people here may want to just hear you talk about Big Brother. Do you want to talk about Big Brother?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you want to say about Big Brother?
Well, I just want to say, I think first thing of all, I think I need to sort of mention about myself and Coulson, who I think was my major problem in the house. I think at the time I was doing so well in the house, I think a lot of people, even though I didn't know it at the time, but I thought the large part of the British public had thought that I was in a position to win or to be in the final. But I think just before we came to the end of it, because we were doing 3 weeks on Big Brother, and we got to the 2 weeks part of it and only had a week left. Big Brother had a game where they gave me the position to read out a few questions. And my question was it had said on the card, Levi, who do you think is the most boring person in the house? And of course, Coulson was the most boring person, because if you can remember, we had this thing where we were Sexy Slayers. It was the band moment where we had formed the band, and he couldn't sing at all, Coulson. He was absolutely couldn't sing, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. He was just absolutely atrocious. And between Marisha and myself, we had to teach him how to sing and how to walk and how to talk, and to be able for us to win the competition, because we won the competition against the girls. And when I was given that question to ask who was the most bored person in the house, really what I was saying to Coulson is that says, yes, you were the most boring person in the house, but you've overcome that shyness and have allowed us to win the competition, because he really did allow us to win the competition. From not being able to sing the harmony and just being really atrocious, you know, absolutely terrible, to somebody who, when we were in front of the judges, you know, it was amazing. You know, all four of us that was in Sexy Slayers, you know, was really giving it to the judges, and Louis and Sharon and everybody else who was the judge, you know, voted us as the winners. So I was really saying to Coulson is that, look, yeah, you couldn't sing, you couldn't walk, you couldn't talk, but because you've learned how to do it, we've won the competition. But yeah, you were the most boring. And my God, Coulson took it to heart. I couldn't understand why Coulson took it to heart, because I thought he was an action man, and I thought he would have just put it back on me, you know, and said, as I would have, or anybody else would have said, no, you are the most boring, and created it as like a joke. But he took it really serious, that he stropped off into the toilet and had a massive cry in the toilet. And I think it really upsetted him that I'd chosen him as the most boring in the house. So when the voting came around for the first time, I was voted for, because as the chef in the house, I was cooking all these most amazing meals, so nobody did vote against me in the house, because I was a chef and cooking some amazing food. But I think at that moment, he had really felt something, you know, that I'd chosen him as the most boring person. And it was then that he voted for me to be out of the house. And he hadn't voted for me before. I don't think so. So I suppose that moment for me was when I got kicked out of the house because of that. But it wasn't because of my fault. It was because of what Big Brother had asked me to read out on my card. But I suppose in hindsight now, I could have said that no one is boring. I could have said that, but it didn't arise to me that he would have taken it that hardly, that that somebody had said to him that he was boring. So I suppose that's my most memorable moment, because that was the catalyst for me to be voted out of the house. But in truth, Sherrie, I was ready to go, because I miss my family dearly so much, and Big Brother, of course, you don't have any phones, you don't have any connection with the outside. I was waking up in the morning thinking that I had to go and do the school run, because I take Christopher to school every morning. So I was the first one up. I missed my partner, I missed my home, and I think I was about ready to come home at the time. So I didn't really mind being voted out. But I know now that it was that moment why I was voted off the house by Colston, obviously, because he didn't like that I referred to him as boring.
Okay, we heard that. Thank you. I want to turn our attentions to Bristol and the St. Paul's Carnival, St. Paul's Festival.
Yes.
And you are the chair of the St. Paul's Festival. You have been for 3 years. Your relationship with Bristol goes before that, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
How?
Yeah,
How so?
yeah. I think it was in the early days. I think I've been coming to Bristol from, I'm gonna show my age now, from the 70s. I still am a member of the great Sir Coxsone sound system from London, and I was coming to Bristol in those days because Bristol was a great place for sound system to come and play. So every sort of once a month or twice a month, we would come with the sound system and play in St. Paul's and around Bristol. And I remember years later when I created the sauce, when I was trying to sell Reggae Reggae sauce to my local people in Brixton. Nobody would buy it from me. They said, Levi, don't sell us no sauce, man. Sell us your music, but don't sell us your sauce, because we can make our own sauces. And I was absolutely pissed off with that. They wouldn't buy it. So I just thought that I need to find somewhere where I can sell this, my grandmother's recipe, that people would respect it. So I decided to go into the Shires, where I know there's hardly any black people like myself.
Is that here? Bristol?
No, not here, but I mean in the Shires, in this lovely country, marketplaces, where, outside, of London.
Villages.
Yes, and Bristol was one of the places that I thought I needed to come to. I wanted to go to Clifton, because that's like the Shires in Clifton. Nobody looking like me around there. And I brought the sauce here. This was like 3 years before Dragon's Den. I used to go into St. Nicholas's Market, and there's a lovely Caribbean place used to be in, I don't know if it's still there, Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny.
In the market, and places in Clifton that I used to go to, and I would have my guitar here like that in Clifton, and I would be like playing the Reggae Reggae sauce songs, and absolutely everyone loved it.
We liked it.
It was a joy for me to actually find people that was really resonated with the Caribbean flavors. They weren't saying to me that they could make their own sauces. They were loving the fact that I was bringing something new to them. And I found great success in and around Bristol. It was absolutely amazing that every week I would be here, around the place and selling the sauce. It was brilliant. So, I mean, years later when I was asked to become the chair of St. Paul's Carnival, for me it was a moment to give something back, to this great city that had really given me the impetus to keep selling the sauce. And I suppose it was that encouragement that I got from here that allowed me to keep doing it. And hence, when I was actually in the Shires, that I met a producer from Dragon's Den, that said, would you like to come on Dragon's Den? So Bristol has played a huge part, even more so than you guys would understand. Because at the time, I needed people to love me and to say that what you were doing is correct and is right, and you were putting music and food together. And it was around here. So the opportunity to give something back was one of the reasons why when I was asked to do it, is that I put my hands up straight away and says, yes, absolutely. I feel that I can use my notoriety as a businessman to be able to put something back in St. Paul's Carnival. And it was just absolutely amazing.
Well, there was some pushback though, wasn't there?
Yes.
Because people were saying that you weren't from Bristol, why should you have to be?
Yeah.
What was your response to that?
Well, I know that sometimes, people will have something to say, no matter what. But I think it's down to you as a person to know that and to expect that. you don't expect everybody's going to love what you do and, and going to absolutely love what you do. There are going to be some negativity towards that. But I think the key thing is how you stand up against that. It's not about saying, okay, few people over here saying that they don't want it, but the majority says that they do. I don't think it's the right thing for me to have said that. I've said, no, I'm going to listen to these guys over here. I said, yeah, I want to do it because I really felt that I had something to give back. I felt that it was an opportunity for me to say thank you for people to have invested in me, and all those people that came to St. Nicholas's Market and Clifton and was buying in Stapleton Road, that was buying the sauce in crates. I think it was a moment for me to give something back, and it was absolutely amazing. I think it's one of the most inspirational things that I've done over the past 3 years, and it all catalyzed down into last year Carnival. What an amazing! I don't know how many guys anybody went to Carnival last year? Oh man, it was absolutely fantastic. Even though I said I've done Carnival, I've been to Carnival many times, but last year was the absolute best that I've ever seen St. Paul's Carnival, for me personally. And the feedback from a lot of people was saying that it is one of the best carnival ever. So I was just absolutely chuffed that I've managed to, to be part of the, the St. Paul CIC board. And one of the most inspirational things was to come into a team, that was absolutely passionate about St. Paul's Carnival. Because I think anything that you do is about the team that you joined. And I went into a team, of amazing people that was really passionate about the carnival. I think that was one of the key things that allowed me to play my part. Because I've always said that I'm not particularly good at anything indeed. The only thing I'm good at is being Levi Roots. And if that can help in any way, then it's job done, then I'm happy to play my part. But I think going into that team of the CIC, I think it was one of the things that helped me to be able to play my part and to be comfortable of that. So it's absolutely been a fantastic journey so far.
And also to have UWE actually funding the carnival and completely funding it. Because I remember 17 years ago when I was on the board, I mentioned the carnival to the board, and most of the board said, Carnival? What's that? But they did invest. Yeah. And that's where it started. It started about 17 years ago, and I actually feel so proud of that moment. It was just £10,000 to start. The following year, another £10,000, and it started going up.
Yeah, it's much more than that now.
This is amazing. Yeah. And now UWE have sponsored it completely. Yeah. Obviously, this would have made your job much easier.
Yeah, no, it's been a fantastic journey. And I got to say that, Carnival depends on the people that invest in it. It cannot be done on its own. I think even when I came on board and I understood, how much it cost to put Carnival, it was quite a shock. Because those of us who are on the outside don't really expect, or don't even aware of where the money comes from, or how it is accumulated. And that's one of the most difficult things, is to be able to inspire people to invest in the carnival. And I think this year coming up, we have a mantra that we say, it takes a city. And it really does take the whole city. And one of the other things which I'm proud of is what carnivals bring to the city of Bristol. Because it's not just about St. Paul's, it is about the whole of Bristol.
Yeah, and beyond.
Absolutely, and I think that when we're talking about investment in Carnival, it has to come from the whole of Bristol, because it's a fantastic spectacle for it. I don't think there's a greater one-day festival where it is about the community, of all of us that lives here. I think that's what it's about. So to invest and to say it takes a city, it really resonates that it's not just about the CIC that makes Carnival happen, just about everyone. So I'm really looking forward to this year, and we've got some posters on the wall. If you guys, on your way out, if you can check it out and snap the QR code and get involved, and whatever little that you can give, it will just shows that you've played your part in something that resonates with the whole city, because it needs it. I think that with the Carnival, it's a stand-up moment for Bristol every year, and it's that moment where we can all get together under one banner and say that we've done it together.
Yeah.
It's not just about us, me as chair or anybody on the CIC. It is about the people. So please, guys, if you can check out the St. Paul's Carnival, and whatever small that you can give, it will all count.
Well, you're standing down this year.
Yes, unfortunately, it's my final year, and I think it's a good thing that each chair only given a moment of time, because it will give it, to turn around and bring somebody else fresh in with fresh ideas. I think I've done all that I can, and I'm very proud of what we've done, especially with last year's carnival. But I think the key thing, for me now, is to facilitate who comes in next, and to make sure that we have an even stronger board than what we have now.
So you're not leaving us completely?
No, not at all, and I'll always be there.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, we have some online audience questions. We're running out of time, but we've got 3 questions here. So let me just give you the first one. What do you do to motivate yourself for the day ahead?
I think music. I just said I brought my guitar here because it really is something that I never leave behind. I think music and food is the 2 things to me. So cooking, creating recipes, and music, I think they're the 2 most inspirational things for me. So I think to motivate my song is writing songs and to be in my kitchen at home and cooking.
So you actually play the guitar
absolutely
in the morning,
absolutely.
Have a little sing-song,
going. Absolutely. I do the school run, and I come back, and then I pick up the guitar, play a few songs, and then I get ready to cook our meals.
Okay. Second question. What advice would you give to the young Levi Roots, pre-Dragon's Den, to help them in business?
Oh, the young Levi. Again, I would repeat what I said to you earlier about believing in yourself. Because as I said before, that was the thing for me, that I didn't want to believe in who I am, particularly because where I'm from. There's nothing to believe in when you were a kid in Brixton in southwest London in the 70s when there was the riots and Brixton was a no-go area and all that kind of stuff. There was nothing to believe in. But I think in the moment when I changed my name and I started to believe in who I am and not the Keith Graham, as I mentioned before, that's when that mantra that I talked about is don't undermine who you are by comparing yourself with someone else. It's because we are different why each of us is special.
Nice. And final question from the online audience. Do you have any advice for young people leaving secondary education who don't know what they want to do yet?
Yes, I think find a mentor. I think that's one of the key things. Because I said before, there is somebody beautiful on the inside. Sometimes it's not about you finding yourself, as it was with me. I think it's someone else that's find you and turn you into the best person. So I think getting a mentor on board, somebody that knows more than you, somebody that you will feel confident to take their advice, I think that can't be a bad thing at all.
Nice advice. Thank you, Levi. Ladies and gentlemen, Levi Roots.
Well, thank you very much. Sherrie, thank you for conducting a brilliant interview. Levi, thank you for being so open, honest, authentic, and being you. You were absolutely perfect. Small correction before you all run away. Levi said very importantly, it takes a city to support a carnival. UE makes a small contribution. I don't want you to run away with the idea that the whole carnival is supported and funded exclusively by the university. It isn't. I only wish I could do that, but I can't. So please do, dig deep. It is a point in time when we can come together as a city, regardless of who we are, where we are, what we believe in. It's a time when we can come together, and it's a really fantastic time to be had by everyone that attends the carnival. So please support it, and let's make this city a great place together. Thank you, Levi. You've been brilliant. Sherrie, thank you very much. You've been brilliant as well. That's the close of this particular part of the session. We've got some drinks, refreshments, and some opportunities for you to network, and that will be in Waterside 3, which is just outside and down, straight down. So please join us there. If you're not joining us, safe journey home. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very, very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this evening. One more time, a big thank you to Levi.